Cool. So welcome everyone to the first Ship 30 for 30 audience building webinar. We have quite a few of these planned over the next 2 weeks that are really going to cover a lot of the fundamentals that we teach to everyone in Ship 30 for 30. So for anyone not familiar, I'm Dickie Bush. I'm joined by Nicholas Cole here. We're here to just share as much free information as we can about the fundamentals of writing online. And so today we're going to kind of take you through a crash course on 3 things that are near and dear to pretty much everything we do. And that's going to be writing headlines that people can't help but click on. We're going to walk you through kind of the difference between your general niche and industry audiences. And a lot of people think one niche is one thing, but we're going to kind of show you our framework for thinking about all the people you can write to. And then we're going to introduce you to our endless idea generator framework, which is, I still use it every single day and it blows my mind. So Cole, I miss anything?
I think that's it. This is going to be, like Dickie said, a crash course. And if you find any of this valuable, I can't stress this enough. This is like scratching the surface of what we cover in Ship 30. This is you're going to walk away, learn like this isn't like most webinars where, we just wave our hands around in the air and try and tell you how awesome we are and fake teach you something. You will walk away from this 10x improvement with your writing. But in all seriousness, there's only so much we can cover in 1 hour. So if you find this valuable, Ship 30 is this multiplied by 10. So I hope you learned something.
And so throughout this, if you have questions, just drop them in the chat. We have a couple people who will be monitoring the chat. We'll gather them. We'll have some time for questions at the end and have a little bonus for everyone who stays to the end as well. So probably go for about 45 minutes to an hour would be our guess, but we're down to stick around and answer questions for as long as you have them. So Cole, what are we going to start with?
So very first thing, we want to make this super actionable, something that you can immediately take away and apply. It all comes down to the headline. Your writing on the internet is 90% of it is what's the headline? How are you telling the reader what you're about to tell them? What are you promising the reader? And the biggest mistake that we see writers make here all the time is they aim for what we call clever instead of clear. So a clever headline, right, is, clouds in a mist, or a lonely September, and they're trying to be clever. They're thinking, oh, I'm being creative. I'm being artistic. I'm doing this thing. And the reader's going to go, whoa, this is so different, right? In reality, the reader's taking that for 1 millisecond and going, I have no idea what you're trying to tell me. And they scroll right past it. And so before we even pull back and start talking strategically about, okay, you've got a general audience, a niche audience, and an industry audience, let's first talk about what is a compelling idea. And a compelling idea gets reflected in your headline. And in your headline, every single reader has 3 questions. What is this about? Who is this for? And why should they read it? What do they get out of it, right? What are you promising them? And so the analogy that we like to draw is, okay, how people pay on the internet, how they pay in their attention is time. So when I put something in front of you, what I'm asking is, do you think this is valuable enough to give me 30 seconds of your time? The same way you go to a burger joint and they're like, hey, we sell burgers for $10, right? And you're asking yourself, is this burger worth $10? Or you go to a sushi restaurant, is this piece of sushi worth $12 for this little piece of fish, right? So when someone comes across what you write, they're asking, is this worth 15 seconds of my time? Is this worth a minute of my time? And the only way they can come to a conclusion is if in the headline and in the way you frame the piece, if you answer these questions for them. So what we're going to do is walk through and just show you some examples of how this works. So in every headline, there are these different pieces, okay? If you see a number at the front, you're saying how many things are we talking about? If there's no number, usually it means we're talking about one thing, one overarching idea, one overarching concept, one overarching framework, right? And as soon as you start adding numbers in, now we're talking about 9 things, 7 steps, 6 reasons, 5 mistakes, whatever it is, okay? Then you have the what. What are we talking about? right? Is this 9 reasons this happens? Is this 9 cooking recipes? Is this 9 tutorials on how to learn how to do this? What is it, right? The reader has to know what it is in order to start deciding, is this valuable? Is this worth my time? Then you have this piece, which is optional, but if you want to make it more specific to the reader, you name the audience, right? So who is this for? Oh, this is 9 tools for writers. This is 9 tools for project managers. This is 9 tools for real estate agents, right? You're naming the audience, okay? And then all of that is like part A of the headline. How many things are we talking about? What is it? And who is it for? So this is the beginning of the journey. The end of the journey is, now, what am I going to get out of this, right? What am I going to feel? What am I going to learn about? What am I going to learn how to overcome? What new way am I going to see the world, right? So if I just had a headline that said 9 reasons, and I'm like, oh, I'm being minimalist, I'm being creative. The reader's like, I have no idea what you're talking, 9 reasons for what? I have no idea what you're saying, right? But as soon as I elongate the journey and I go 9 reasons writers experience writer's block, that's the outcome. When you read this, you're going to learn the 9 reasons why writers experience writer's block, right? So then you get to make the decision. Is that something I'm looking to pay for with my time right now? Yes or no? So a good way of thinking about this is actually drawing a line down the middle. And we call these two, you got part A and part B. This is the curiosity gap. So every great headline, every great idea, every great everything has the beginning of the journey and the end of the journey. Here's what you're going to get out of it. And then you don't tell them the middle, right? Why you watch the movie, why you read the article, why you listen to the podcast is they go, in 1972, Dave whoever killed Jane whoever, and he did it with a chainsaw. And by the end, he was in jail for 47 years, and now there's a law named after him. This is his story, right? You listen to fill in the middle. They give you the beginning, they give you the end, and then they go, now listen to the next 45 minutes of this, and we will tell you what happens, right? So the same thing exists with anything that you write. Here's the beginning. Here's what you get out of it. If you click to read, you get the middle. And that's how online writing works. Now, of course, everyone's response when we explain this is, well, isn't that clickbait? Right? Aren't you just tricking the reader? And the answer is, it's only clickbait if you don't keep your promise. Right? If I tell you, hey, I'm gonna share with you the 9 reasons writers experience writer's block, and then you click. And first of all, I don't give you 9 reasons. And second of all, the 9 reasons I give you are super surface level and not different or not helpful at all. You're going to sit there and be like, you tricked me. But if you click on this and I give you 9 really thought through, unique reasons, and each one has a little story, and each one references a famous writer and tells their story, and I make it super valuable, you're not going to sit there and go, I got clickbaited. You're going to sit there and go, this was so fascinating. I need to text this to 3 of my friends right now. Right? So much of this and so much of writing online is about reframing the way that you're thinking about it. And then once you have the new framing, it's very easy to execute all these frameworks and all these principles. But so much of the way that we're taught to write is about being creative and clever, and you're doing something that's mysterious, and oh, the story doesn't start until the 12th page. No one cares. No one cares. You have to make your point immediate. You have to tell the reader what it's about. You have to tell them whether it's for them or not. And you have to tell them what they're going to get out of it. So anyone maybe throw in the chat here. I think something that is really helpful is, are any of your titles coming to mind right now? Anything you've written in the past month or 2 months where you wrote a title and now you can see and you're like, wow, no wonder no one clicked on this. This title was, I was trying to be clever instead of clear. Or maybe you wrote a title where you were doing this and you didn't realize that you were using all these principles. You're like, wow, I didn't understand why people loved this title that I wrote. And now I have a way of vocalizing it. Now I understand why it was working. So if you have any titles you want to share in the chat, we'd love to see them, love to hear about them, and we can talk about them a bit.
Yeah, we can also do a quick workshop if anyone drops one that they want, kind of walk through this, because sometimes it's super helpful to see. So if anyone has them, go ahead and drop them in the chat. But I think one thing to double click on here is with your headline, you want to always be writing to one person, right? You might have an ideal audience in mind, but within that audience, you want to be writing to one specific person that you can describe, who maybe in this example, right? I think in the previous one is a better one. It's someone who's experiencing writer's block, right? So you're going to very clearly describe that problem. Now, the person you're writing for should be able to tell right away when they read your headline, is this article for them? If it is, they're going to click on it. And if it's not, they're going to scroll past it. But you want them to make that choice, because you really only want people that you only want that one person clicking on it to read, right? The law of the internet says that if you write to one person, it's guaranteed that a lot of people have that exact same problem. So you really want to keep that one person in mind as you're writing these. If I'm an example for this one is someone that doesn't have writer's block, I hope they scroll right past this, right? Because I don't care about writer's block. I never experienced it. So I think that's just something to keep in mind that we always talk about.
Yeah, we can immediately make this more specific in a lot of different ways, right? We can go 9 reasons sales copywriters experience writer's block. Now, you're not going to read this if you're a novel writer, right? You're like, no, this is for sales copywriters. This is for someone different, right? So the words that you choose are really, really important. So Chris, I saw in the chat, you threw in the danger of skewed perspective, right? You're hinting like there's a bit of a curiosity gap there. Yeah. But now how do we tell the reader even more specifically what they get out of it? Right? Like you can notice there's a huge specificity difference if you said the danger of skewed perspective. I don't know what you wrote about, right? So I'm just making this up. The danger of skewed perspective, how misunderstanding localized real estate data can dramatically affect the returns you get in your portfolio, right?
And so here's what's important, right? So Cole had no clue what you wrote about there. The danger of skewed perspective could mean a million things, right? And so there's confusion on the reader, or confusion in your headline means the reader's going to scroll right past it, right? So I'm actually curious, what did you write about in the danger of skewed perspective? Like, was it
what's the
that
industry,
having a skewed perspective does something to you, or it literally could be about anything, right? So if I just come across that, I'm going to be very confused.
Yeah, no, another one while Chris, you throw that in the chat. Daria, yeah, this essay of you're 6 people away from anyone in the world. Well, 6 people away from what? I'm 6 people away from the job of my dreams. I'm 6 people away from becoming a millionaire. I'm 6 people away from traveling to a country I've never been to. Like 6 people away from what? So it's this outcome piece that I find most writers are missing. They're like, I want to write about this. And that's great that you want to write about it. But what does the reader get? Right. And it's not about you. Like, write what you want to write about, but you have to answer the other half of the question. What does the reader get in exchange? Otherwise, they're not going to know if they want to buy your burger or not. Right. So if you don't have the outcome piece, you're in trouble. Yeah, quit your 9 to 5 to focus on your creative dreams. Cool, we're almost there, right? So now, as we're going to get into, right, how do you execute that, right? Is this a step-by-step, here's how to quit your 9 to 5? Is this a motivational piece? Hey, quit your 9 to 5, follow your creative dreams. This is just to inspire you. This is a personal story, right? There's all these, like, having the idea is really only step 1.
So this is good. And I want to put a pin on this, quit your 9 to 5 and focus on your creative dreams, because we're going to walk you through at the end our what we call the AAAA framework, which is how you can say one idea in 4 different ways. And I can already see how this one would slot very nicely into that for we're going to save it to the end, but put a pin in that one because we're going to come back to it. So we want to make sure we have time for everything. So that's quick crash course in headlines. I know we threw a lot at you there. There's kind of a lot to process, but the TLDR of it is make that curiosity gap. Have your content be the difference between what you introduce, the outcome you present, and they have to read to get there. That's kind of the way we think about it.
Yep. So now with that in mind, right, this is always everyone's big question. Do I need to sit down and have this whole strategy before I begin? What's my niche? Who am I writing for? I need to have it all figured out before I begin. And the reality is, and this is our entire mantra within Ship 30 for 30, is you can't steer a stationary ship. You have no idea. You think you know what readers want, you don't. You think you know what your audience cares about from you, you don't. And I say that in the best way. I didn't, Dickie didn't, none of us do. The whole strategy is to actually start writing and to start publishing. And then as you write, each thing that you write, that's why within Ship 30, we go, you're going to write 30 atomic essays in 30 days. Because what that's doing is that's accelerating your learning process. So you write and you publish 30 things in 30 days. And then now every single thing you write is gathering a new data point for you. Oh, I wrote about this. What did people think? I wrote about this. What did people think? Are people liking it? Are they not liking it? Are they asking questions? What questions do that reveal to me that I can write more about? Right? Every time you write, you're taking a step forward and you are learning. The problem is when people sit down and go, if I don't have the strategy, I'm not going to start. So here, what we're going to talk about is there are these 3 buckets. Most people start writing in a very general sense. The goal is to ultimately write in a niche sense. And then you have this industry bucket that's kind of fun in terms of positioning yourself as an expert and industry leader. But all 3 of these end up playing different roles in your library. So we're going to walk through each one, talk about how you write for each one, and then show you how ultimately the goal is you can bounce between them, right? You can write about general topics. You can write about really niche topics. You can write about your industry. But what's important is that every time you sit down to write, you have the clarity of which one are you aiming for, because they all serve different purposes, right? So Dickie, before we jump overboard, anything you want to share there?
No, I think just kind of strap in, because this one gets a little bit, we throw a lot at you here. And so don't get overwhelmed thinking that, oh, now I need to stop and go figure out what my general, what my niche, what my industry, all of that is from the top down. You want, and something we preach all the time is you want to treat your writing like a product. And if there's anything that the great startups have taught us so far, it's you really got to get to market quickly and iterate, right? What you think about today, you need to get out there and test and iterate on. And then this is going to kind of work itself out over time. It's not something that you decide today and then works for the next 5 years. Yeah. I'll say these 3 buckets change for me almost every single week. And you get a little bit more specific. You gather a new data point. You have a new perspective. Your audience tells you a certain thing, something you wrote that you didn't expect to resonate with you really did. And then you want to write about that more. So think about that. And your goal at the end of this is just to have some broad outline of what your general niche and industry audiences are.
Yep. Yeah. So we said you were going to learn something today. So it's like drinking out of a fire hose. So get ready. So the very first is you have your general audience. So your general is, think of all the biggest categories in the world, right? The big, broadest, most universal categories: self-help, habits, relationships, money, productivity, right? These are all huge categories. So when you look at content that goes viral, or you look at books that, New York Times bestsellers, universally, it's almost never super niche content, right? Like the video on, here are the 22 specific growth hacks for getting more out of Twitter isn't what goes and gets 100 million views. What gets 100 million views is like, look at what this, chimpanzee in a zoo can teach us about love, right? Like it's this massively broad general idea. And so if you're going to write for a general audience, you need to keep in mind that what you're doing, that's why I said before you write, you want to know, am I writing for a general audience or am I writing for a niche audience? Because when you're writing for a general audience, in order to appeal to the most different types of people, you're inherently not going to go as deep and you're going to go more wide, right? So what are the ways that you go wide, right? You're using more simplified language, right? Universal language that appeals to more people than a specific group of people, you know? You're using very easy to understand organization, right? You're not asking someone to read a 4,000 word Atlantic article. You're like, I want you to read a listicle, or I want you to watch a TikTok video, or I want you to, like, it's something that's very easy to consume. And then third is it has to be a universal problem, right? Everyone wants to learn how to make more money. Everyone wants to learn how to have a happier relationship. Everyone wants to learn how to build healthier habits, right? So the problem with aiming toward a general audience is that because you're trying to be super universal, that means you're also inherently being a little more broad and a little more vague, which means it's hard, right, to stand out because everyone's like, do you want to make more money? Well, yeah, of course. Yeah. So yes, it's more universal, but yes, it's also way more saturated, right? It's way bigger of a sea. This is very different than the second content bucket, which would be a niche audience, right? So with a niche, it's not so much, you don't really care if you get 1 million views or 100 million views, right? Like how many people are on this Zoom? There's 48 people on this Zoom, right? I don't care if 1 million people understand what we're talking about here. The only thing that matters is if this group of 48 people, this is exactly what you need, right? So when you're writing for a niche, your goal is not how do I get eyeballs? Your goal is not how do I sell the most, right? Your goal is how do I give a very specific group of people exactly what they need? So it's almost like if your first content bucket is reach and your measure for success is reach and virality, your second content bucket is density, potency, right? I care that the 46 people here are like, this is really helpful for me. Whereas if 1,000 people are like, I kind of like it, that's not a good measure for success for me.
And it's important to think about the audience response to these two types of articles, where if you write something that is very general, the comment's going to be, this was great, or wow, awesome story. They're going to make no connection to you as the writer. It's going to be kind of all about the story. Now, a niche piece of content that resonates very heavily, like 3 SEO tips for ConvertKit users, right? That you write very specifically, and it's going to cut out 99.9% of people. But when you put that content out there, I'm going to create almost a personal relationship with you because it's like, wow, that created so much value for me. I'm going to say something to you because I know that the people out there, it's a small audience that you just took the time to write for, right? It's almost like there's only so many people that could resonate with, and I'm one of them. And so here we are, kind of, you've provided an immense amount of value very specifically for me. And I think people get caught up in understanding that you can write both of these. You can write things that go viral because they talk about building better habits. And you can also talk about super niche things that resonate with a small group. And doing that's actually the right strategy. Some's going to go broad and attract a ton of attention. Some's going to attract a really dense amount of attention that might buy something from you in the future or something like that. But it's a mental model to realize that not everything is my niche, right? There's levels and a spectrum to this whole thing, and kind of knowing what you're writing, where it falls on that spectrum, and the type of audience feedback you're going to get from that is just an important thing to keep top of mind.
Yeah, notice, I love that example, because notice the difference, right? If say you write something that's super broad, and that's amazing, you get 1 million views on it. That's amazing. I've had this happen. Okay. You write something super broad, you get 1 million views on it. Every comment is like, wow, amazing, good job, super. And nobody really cares beyond that, right? And then you go write something super niche, like Dickie's example, and 100 people read it, and 3 out of those 100 people email you and say, this was so incredibly helpful. I'm actually looking for someone to help me fix all my SEO mistakes within my ConvertKit sequences. Do you do that? Can I hire you as a consultant? Right. So it depends on what your goal is, right? But I've been writing online for 10 years. I've hundreds of millions of views. Okay. And the vast majority of them have done absolutely nothing for me. Like, that's just the reality. It was really cool. It was a cool dopamine hit. Like, amazing. I got 1 million views on something that I wrote, but it doesn't really do much. And then meanwhile, I write something, Dicky writes something, you go write something, and 100 people read it. And all of a sudden, someone wants to hire you as a consultant, or someone wants to give you a job offer, or 10 of those people all are like, I just went and bought your book on this. This is amazing. I just gifted your book to 10 other people, right? The niche is density, potency. And so often we find people get obsessed with, like, I want all these big numbers. And in reality, the big numbers are not really what move the needle, right? Specificity is what moves the needle.
And let's go into bucket number 3 now, because this is just a little extra spin that I think is a very interesting way to add credibility to whatever you're talking about.
So this is where, over time, whatever it is that you write about, whatever industry you're in, right? Ultimately, at some point, there's a lot of benefit that comes from being seen as a leader in your industry. Okay. For those that don't know, I built a ghostwriting company. I've ghostwritten for hundreds of executives and founders and investors and Grammy winners and Olympians, all these people. Okay. And there's a secret to being seen as an industry leader. It's very simple. Anyone can do it. And the secret is, write about where things are headed. That's it. If you are the one who is writing about the future, eventually people perk up their ears and go, this person must know what they're talking about, because they're writing about where things are going. They're not writing about where things were. They're thinking about where the world's going, right? So all of a sudden, whatever your niche is, whatever it is, the thing that you're writing about, if over time you go, I really want to position myself as an authority in this space, all you have to do is go, hey, I noticed this interesting statistic came out this year. Here's what I think that means for this industry 5 years from now. Hey, this interesting thing just happened. This platform just released this new feature. Here's what I think that's going to mean for my industry a year from now, 2 years from now. And all of a sudden, everyone looks at you and goes, wow, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way before. And immediately you're perceived as the leader, right? So it's a very simple technique that anyone can use, but it's very underrated. We don't see a lot of people doing this. Dicky, anything you want to add to this one?
I think it's just, it's a very easy way to add credibility and just sprinkle a little bit on top to whatever you're talking about, right? And the thing is, these types of pieces are not that difficult to write, because they're almost just a byproduct of the way you operate on a daily basis, right? You're kind of operating under some kind of futuristic assumption, right? I think that, like, we believe that a lot more people are going to want to write on the internet in the future. And that's why we're doing this, right? So we could talk about why we think more people are going to write in the future, what the power of it is, why it's still underutilized, all these things that just extrapolate what you're currently doing to some kind of why you're doing it based on a futuristic kind of expectation. People resonate very heavily with this because they like to be told where the future is potentially going, right? Because that gives them that little bit of edge. So whatever industry you're in, you can talk about this one. Email marketing, the 5 best apps that are about to come out in the next year, the 5 changes ConvertKit might make. If you're into health and fitness, how Whoop's new feature is going to do this, that, and the other thing, right? All these cool things that you can if you write a single thing about the future, I immediately am just like, that person's thoughtful, right? They're thinking more. I'm going to pay more attention to the way that they talk about X, Y, and Z, only because you have to have that extra bit of thought to talk about the future in that way. So I think this is one of the most underutilized pieces of content out there, and one I'm actually going to go write about after this because I haven't written enough about it, right? Once you see it, it's wow, because think of all the writers that you potentially look up to. They've probably written almost a pillar piece on this. They made some kind of bold prediction that is still getting them attention because you can look back on it in the past.
Yep. Yeah. Notice how, I mean, whatever you're interested in, you're doing it because you believe it's going to be more interesting in the future, right? Like that's why we do the things that we do. So whatever you're doing, just play it out for the next 5 years and ask yourself, where do I think this is going? Why do I want to continue doing this for the next 5 years, right? And then if something is going away, right? Say you love classical piano or old classical painting or whatever, and it's going away. Well, then you should write about, hey, my industry is going away. Here's why I think that's a problem. Here's why I think it still matters. Here's why I think, right? Like those pieces, those opinion pieces are really valuable to the world. So Jill, to your question here of what if you get it wrong? I mean, look, if you get it right, you look like you're a genius. And if you get it wrong, nobody's going to remember. And chances are a lot of other people got it wrong too. Right. So then at that point, go write a piece on why you were wrong and what you learned.
Right.
Like
that's the secret. That's the secret, right?
There's always more to write about. Like there's really not this, like our whole goal with Ship 30 seriously is to scale this idea that it's not that you just sit down, you come up with a magical idea, you get it all right from the beginning, you write it once, and then the whole world thinks that you're brilliant, right? It's all about iterating. You write, you learn, you iterate, you do it again. You write, you learn, you iterate, you do it again. That's the whole secret. So now with this in mind, I want to show you how this plays out. So this is what we end up calling a content roadmap. This is an exercise that we help shippers with at the beginning of Ship 30, but I want to show you how this plays out. So let's say over time, someone like me, you learn, you know what, my niche is writing for writers. It's basically what I do. I write for online writers and I go, hey, if you want to learn how to write online, I can help you. Okay. So notice how in a very niche sense, right? Every time I'm saying, hey, how to write these authors, right? Struggling to write, I'm naming, hey, this isn't for everybody. This is only for writers, right? It's very specific, right? These 19 New York Times bestselling authors all share these 9 writing habits in common. You're not going to want to read that unless you're interested in writing, right? Now, what's interesting is here's where there's benefit in bouncing back and forth between niche and general, okay? Is with one single word, we can all of a sudden make this topic appeal to more people. So notice all we did is we changed one word. We said these 19 New York Times bestselling authors all share these 9 daily habits in common. These aren't writing habits. These are daily habits. So now, whether you're a writer or not, you go, oh, interesting. All these credible people have these daily habits in common. I'm interested in that. And then what can I do within that article? I can then use writing as an example to kind of bring readers from the general over to the niche, right? So you're taking the idea, you're intentionally opening the aperture, you're making it more accessible to more people. And then once they're in, you go, and I'm going to use my niche as the example within it. And it brings them over. Okay. So same thing here, right? Like I'm using something super broad, super universal. Okay. Want to know the secret to happiness? Okay. Everyone wants, what's the secret to happiness, right? Oprah says to keep a journal. Okay. I got a credible person. She's saying, hey, you got to keep a journal, right? So I'm strategically aiming, right? Journaling and writing niche, but I'm aiming it toward a broader audience. But the goal isn't to just write broad things for the sake of writing broad things. Like it doesn't make sense for me to go write a broad article like, the secret to health and wellness, period. But I could write the secret to health and wellness has to do with journaling and reflection and then bring them over to my niche, right? So the goal is actually to connect the general audience with the niche audience and then choose how do you want to turn the dial? Do I want to make this really accessible? Or do I want to make this like, these are the specific actionable things that you need right now, you as the niche audience member. And then the industry audience is like the cherry on top. You sprinkle that on, you're like, I'm going to write about the future of this. And you can do the same thing, right? You can talk more broadly industry. Where's publishing going in general, right? Or niche industry. Where's Amazon's self-publishing platform going? right? So these are all just dials. And that's one of the things that we really like sharing with people is that writing and writing online is all just a series of choices. So the more conscious you are of all these little volume knobs, the easier it is for you to learn, oh, this is working, this isn't. When I turn these knobs, I get this result. When I turn these knobs, I get a different result, right?
So go ahead and let that resonate for a minute and drop in the chat as you're thinking about it what your general niche and industry audiences are, because what we're going to do now is take you through our endless idea generator framework that you start with these 3 buckets and then you say, what am I going to write about in them? And that's kind of where a lot of people get stuck. They either think that they have to have their audience figured out, or once they do, they don't know what's actually going to resonate. So the way we think about this is kind of a 3-step process with all 3 columns. So Cole, if you want to go to the next slide. So the way to think about it is there are really 3 choices you're going to make. You're going to say, what type of writing is this? And we're going to take you through our, we really need a better name for it because it's just 4 A's. So maybe it's a quadruple A, something like that. Like we got triple A, we need the quadruple A. But it's a way to take one idea and say it in 4 different ways. And within that, you can say it in 100 different ways. So we're going to, anyone who drops their general and niche audience, we'll take you through this kind of endless idea generator. And then you take a proven approach. So something that works every time you go about doing it that way. And then what kind of credibility can you sprinkle on that really, whether it's from you or some kind of other expert. And once you see this framework, I guarantee you're going to walk away with just quite a few too many ideas to write about. So Cole, let's dive in.
Yeah, this is a big 0 to 1. Dickie, I love when you say that. That's my new thing. This is a 0 to 1 concept right here. So I encourage, take screenshots. All right. Write notes. This, like I said, I've been writing online for 10 years. I literally still use this endless idea generator on a daily basis. This is how it works. All right. So here we've got our quadruple A framework. Okay. So anything that you write is going to fall into these 4 general categories. Okay. It's either super actionable, right? It's like, I think about the most niche things here. Like right now I'm trying to figure out how to mount a TV in my house. And I have no idea how to mount a TV, right? So I got to go look up, how do I mount a TV, right? And I hope someone wrote an article online walking me through step-by-step actionable how to do that, right? Or it's going to be analytical, right? Hey, here's a bunch of interesting data. Here's some interesting studies. Here's some numbers that just came out. Let me extract some insights from them, right? Let me tell you. So for me as a writer, I might go, hey, some interesting data just came out. Actually, I was just reading about this, that nonfiction books just surpassed fiction books as the most sold type of book. Usually fiction outsells nonfiction for the first time, like in a very long time. And I go, okay, well, that's really interesting. So here's an analytical piece on how I'm interpreting that data. Here's what I think that means for the future of book sales, right? Aspirational is motivating, right? Yes, you can. I did it, you can too, right? So the aspirational piece is the value that the reader gets is, it's very motivating. By the time I finish reading this, you're going to help me see the world in a different way. You're going to make me feel like I can do this too. And then anthropological, right, is like the explanation. Here's why. All these things happened. Most people misunderstand the problem. Here's really why it happens, right? So whatever you want to write about, so here, going back to this example, quit your 9 to 5 to focus on your creative dreams, right? You can see how you could execute this idea in all of these different ways, right? Here's how to, actionable, quit your 9 to 5. Right? Analytical, XYZ% of people quit their jobs between ages A and B, right? Here's what that means about millennials who want to quit their jobs and pursue their side hustle, right? Aspirational. When I was 26 years old, I quit my job and started my first company. You can too, right? Let me tell you the inspiring story. Anthropological, right? Here are all the reasons why people are afraid to quit their job and pursue their dreams, right? So all of a sudden, like if someone says, I have an idea, whenever someone says, I have an idea to write about, we go, okay, slow down, right? Put it through the endless idea generator. What are you really trying to say? Okay. So this is part one. All right. So before we move from there, Dickie, anything you want to emphasize there?
I love this example because I could think of 100 different things for quit your 9 to 5, and you can sprinkle in different iterations of this, right? So for the aspirational, you could write about yourself, or you could write about these 10 people quit their 9 to 5. The analytical, you could say, here's my personal story of the numbers that allowed me to quit my job and do my passion full time, right? Here are the numbers that these 10 other people needed to have the confidence to do that, right? The actionable could be 100 different things, right? How to request a remote work job so you can start to get your way out of your 9 to 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
A proven template for doing that. That is such a good example. And anthropological reasons people struggle. 5 ways that you'll be happier. Like the anthropological is talking about human nature as you do this, right? So I mean, that's a very deep one for human nature. Why people struggle to, ways to overcome the fear of doing it, ways to overcome people who try to talk you out of it, right? I mean, just an infinite number as you look down this thing. So keep this framework in mind, and just anytime you come up with a new idea, what I do is I print it, or I don't print it out, but I write actionable, analytical, aspirational, anthropological, and I put 3 bullets under each. And I force myself to come up with 12 ideas based on that one concept. And then I have 3 months of content if I really want to, right? Or I have 3 days because they all make so much sense that I could absolutely churn through them. And so keep this one, let this one marinate, because I think this is the most powerful thing. The first time I saw it, I said, oh my goodness, like the idea that I'd ever stare at a blank page again is just gone.
Yep. And the thing that I want to emphasize here is what you will find is that when you come up with an idea, usually one of these is the best fit for it. Right. So that's kind of the whole exercise. Like Dickie, when you said you go through and you list, well, here's ideas for analytical. If I was to approach this from an analytical perspective or an actionable perspective or an aspirational perspective, right? There's 2 big things here. One is, which one is it best suited for? Right? Which vehicle is going to be the most valuable for this idea? And second, again, one of the big things that we evangelize in Chip 30 is using data to learn, what do you do best? Right? So for example, I've learned from my own writing and just looking at how things performed online that when I write actionable things, when I do these how-to guides for here's writing frameworks, here's publishing frameworks, right? People really love that. They get a ton of value out of that. I'm not as good at the analytical stuff. I can do it sometimes, but like that's the data tells me that's not what people find most valuable from me. I also failed math. So, that's there are these things where you learn, right? Like that's the whole purpose. That's the whole purpose of writing, is you're going to learn which one of these you do well. And then when you learn which ones you do well, hammer those home, do them over and over again. That's how people are going to go, oh, I always go to this person for this thing. So now let's take that. We got, all right, what do you want to write about? Now we go into these proven approaches. All right. These are everywhere. I encourage you after this webinar, go spend 5 minutes scrolling through the homepage of the Wall Street Journal, CNN, New York Times, Forbes magazine, whatever, any website aggregator. Okay. And you will see over and over again, how to XYZ. Lessons learned from managing a hedge fund for 27 years, right? Mistakes I made starting my first company, right? These are all proven approaches. There's a reason why people use them over and over and over again, because we really like packaging ideas and packaging stories in little containers. Those containers make it easy to know, here's what we're getting out of it, right? So all of a sudden, even with this first slide, if we go back to this example, right? Quit your 9 to 5, focus on your creative dreams. We can execute this in 4 already. We've got a ton of ideas, right? And then you combine it with a proven approach and we've got even more ideas. So all of a sudden it's how to quit your 9 to 5 to focus on your creative dreams. And there's a whole suite of how-to articles that you can get really specific in there, right? So think about, just for a second, how to tell your boss you're quitting, how to start your side hustle before you quit, how to start saving money to give yourself runway so that you feel comfortable by the time that you quit your job, how to get your first client once you've quit your job, right? So when people are like, I don't know what to write about, it's like, you're just not using the endless idea generator. That's the problem. Okay. So each one of these has dozens and dozens and dozens of offshoots. All right. So same thing. So let's keep going. Lessons learned, quitting my first job to start my first company. Mistakes I made, quitting my job too early to go do my own thing, right? Quotes from people who successfully quit their jobs and went on to start amazing companies. Quotes from college dropouts, right? 5 ways or 5 little known ways or unique ways to start saving money while you're working your job to fund your creative leap, right? Tools you can use. You just go down the list, just keep plugging them together. And all of a sudden, each one of these, every time you create an idea, you can ask yourself, oh, well, wait, if someone's interested in this, they also need to have answers to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 other articles. And then, oh, if they're interested in that, they also have questions about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 other articles, right? So this is a bit of a, when you use this, we say you have the opposite problem. You're going to have too much to write about. You'll have too many ideas. So Dickie, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I think I feel that way all the time, is which of these ideas do I actually go write about now? And you have too many, and that prioritization is an entirely different problem. But Zolma, I hope that was helpful in terms of what you in terms of number of ideas that you have to go write about now, right? So we took just a simple idea, and I think there's about 50 to 100 there, just like that.
Yep. So just again, to emphasize, all you're doing is you're taking the thing I want to write about, you're combining it with the proven approach, and then you're thinking, okay, well, who is this for? And what do they get out of me telling this, right? Like if I'm going to share mistakes I made starting my first company or mistakes I made buying my first piece of real estate, right? What does the reader get? What do you want to leave them with so that you don't make the same mistakes too, or so that you can solve XYZ problem? You always want to come back to, so what does the reader get as a result of reading this? Okay. So then the third piece here is the why me. Okay. This is the credibility piece. And this is arguably where we find writers have the most hesitancy. A lot of writers think, okay, well, I'm not an expert. I'm not the world-class example of this. So who am I? Who am I to write about this? And there's a lot of different ways of thinking about this. First of all, sometimes you're the expert, right? Sometimes you're the expert in really embarrassing things. I was doing a workshop this morning, and like the example I used is, imagine someone asked you the question, what's the best TV show out right now, right? Well, your credibility might be, hey, full transparency here, I am a TV degenerate. I watch 100 hours of TV a week, and I can absolutely tell you what the best TV show is today, right? So all of a sudden, you just took something that is like, you would never think that's what makes you credible. But in the context of that example, you, of course, are the most credible because you've watched all the trash, right? So it's really interesting to think about, what is your credibility based on things that you've experienced or things that you know just because you're in it, right? And so a lot of times what I point out to people is like, say you work as a project manager at a tech company. Well, your credibility is, hey, I'm a project manager at a tech company, right? Say you're an intern at Nike. Okay. Hey, my credibility is I'm an intern at Nike, right? Like, just pull from your own experience. And all of a sudden, when you tell that to the reader goes, cool, maybe you have a different perspective. I want to know what it's like to see the world of Nike through the eyes of an intern. Share away, right? The second form of credibility is, you know what, in this topic, I'm not the expert, but I went out and I curated all the experts, right? So the most legendary example of this is Tim Ferriss, right? Tim Ferriss was, by all accounts, a very average human, right? And he wasn't an expert in anything, but he goes, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm just going to curate all the insight from all these really smart people, and I'm going to organize it by bucket, right? Here's what everyone says about productivity. Here's what everyone says about wealth building. Here's what everyone says about relationships, right? And so what happened? He became the curator of experts. And as a result, he became the expert of curating experts, right? So whatever topic you're in, like for example, if I'm writing about writing and I go, hey, I'm actually not a true sales copywriter. So instead of me pretending like I am, I'm going to go curate the insights of all the world-class sales copywriters. And since I already write to writers, it's relevant, right? But now I'm just leveraging their credibility and giving it to the readers. So I share this because a lot of times it's much easier to start by leveraging other people's credibility rather than feeling like you need to be the expert yourself. Dickie, anything you want to add here?
No, but I think the credibility piece is just another decision you have to make, right? Am I writing, from what perspective am I writing this? Am I claiming to be the expert? How do I need to change the way I say it if that's true? How do I clarify that I'm not the one making this up, but I'm taking it from all the experts? Or in terms of what I write about the most, I think I fall into number 3, where I'm not really the expert on most things, but I'm pretty good at distilling ideas down. And so a lot of it is I just took a lot of ideas and made them very hyper readable, and you're reading it because everyone else made it confusing and I made it easy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's a bunch of different ways you can go about doing this. So the next slide really shows just the number of combinations that you can make with this. Right. You have one single idea, say it 4 different ways, throw each of those through the proven approaches, sprinkle on some kind of credibility, and I think you have months, years of content. Throw it on a calendar and just start writing. Yep. And how I bet goes about, or what I bet happens, is you write for 3 weeks and then you have such immense clarity of what to write about next that you clear the rest of that content calendar and you start a new one. And then you do that again for another 30 days. And it's like, oh, now I know exactly what I want to write about. I clear the rest of the content calendar, and that's just how it goes, right? You can't hypothecate what here, right? You could put all these out there and say, these are all great ideas, but you have to put them out there and let the market tell you, are you onto something? Or are you making an assumption? I think this is going to work, and I'm going to write all these, and I'm not going to publish any of them until I have 40 of them done. And then I'm going to release all of them to the world, and all the readers are going to see all that work and tireless sweat I put in. Or you could start and write one today, engage the market feedback and see, what am I changing? What worked about that? What didn't work? How can I reflect on it? What is the market saying? What resonated with me to share? And so I think the last thing you want to do with the endless idea generator is go make this big list and then go write them all, but not publish any of them. And then you hit publish in 2 months on 10 of them, and you hear the crickets of the internet. And it's like, none of this really was what we're looking for. Thanks for putting in those 2 months, but try again. Or you can take it every day, one day at a time, and kind of put things out there, learn from them, workshop them with other people, have a group of others to kind of jam on it with. So I just want to put that out there because sometimes that's the immediate takeaway. It's like, ooh, now I need to go into the woods like Henry David Thoreau and write up all these ideas quietly away from everyone, because that's exactly what I need to say. But that's just not how it works. So the endless idea generator is a way to get you to take action.
Yep. Yeah, this is such a look. We've done this with enough writers at this point. You can fight it, but this is one of those like brutal truths of the internet, right? You think you know what people want, and you don't until you hit publish. The moment you hit publish is when you actually learn, is this what someone wanted? Yes or no? And a lot of writers avoid that learning process because they'd rather say to themselves, if I don't hit publish, I'm still correct. I know what's right, right? And then the moment they hit publish, they have to be confronted with a different reality. So again, our whole mentality with even the way that Ship 30 is structured is blast through that first 30 days, rip the Band-Aid off, right? Get the process going. And everybody fights it the first 1, 2, 3 days. And then by day 30, it's like they can't even remember what life was like when they first started, because now they're out of the mindset of, I know what's right. And they're in the mindset of, I'm looking to see what readers are telling me is right. And it's a powerful change. You go from being an old school writer with a chapeau on and a cigarette staring out the window, and you become a data-driven writer with rapid fire feedback loops, and you're learning every single moment of every single day. It's a powerful thing. So let's take some questions. Any questions that people have? I know we just threw a lot at you. I hope this was helpful. We really try and make these webinars as valuable as possible. We hate the hand wavy stuff. We really want people to walk away learning new frameworks they can immediately start applying to their writing. So if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. There will be a replay. I think, Dickie.
Yep, we'll send a replay to everybody. So,
awesome.
How do you decide what resonates? You don't decide. The audience decides. So your likes, your comments, your responses, all of those other things, the way that they talk about it to you is what decides. You don't decide. That's the beauty of putting things out into the market. How do you track? It could be number of engagements, number of views. We have a whole section of listening to the data that the market gives you. It could be someone asks a question and then you clarify it, and that's a whole new thing. So yeah, the best thing is you don't decide what resonates. You wait for the market to tell you. And it'll be crystal clear. That's the thing, that people even ask that question of, how do I know what's resonating? It becomes absolutely crystal clear once you start putting it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, not to overcomplicate it, right? We're not saying you need to go do some big fancy data analysis. It's very simple. Like, whatever your platform is, we talk a lot about platforms in the onboarding of Ship 30. We use Twitter for the whole writing challenge. Twitter's great. Quora is really great. Medium can work. It's a little bit slower of a flywheel, so it's a little harder to get distribution there. But Twitter and Quora are our current favorites, with Medium then thereafter, and then LinkedIn's also possible. But really all you're looking for is very high level. I write 10 things. Which one performed the best? Which one got the most views? Which one got the most comments? Which one got the most shares? Okay, why did that one perform the best? Sit there, think about it, reflect on it, right? What was working? What can you copy again? What can you double down on? What can you duplicate? Write another 10 things. Which one performed the best, right? So you're just looking at very high level data and feedback. Or when you write something and a bunch of people ask you questions saying, how did that happen? How do you do that? Right? Those are signals that you have more things to write about. This question of why are Twitter and Quora the best is a bit of a rabbit hole, but we'll give you the nutshell here. The best place to write online is not a blog, for one very, very specific reason, because no one knows your blog exists. And your blog is a static website. Your blog has no distribution flywheel, right? It is just a page on the internet. Social sites like Twitter and Quora are very, very good at matching what you're writing about with readers who are interested in that. That's the whole purpose of a newsfeed. That's the whole purpose of an algorithm. So in terms of where you want to start writing, if your first goal is, hey, I want to gather data and I want to learn what's working with my readers, you need to be writing in an environment where there's millions of readers and an algorithm that's working hard to pair your content with potential readers.
The job is to keep you on the platform. So they want to match up readers with writers. Very simply.
Yep.